This example touched me very deeply. It takes me about 3 minutes to describe. It's so easy for us to this day to acknowledge and preserve one implication of Tawhid and neglect its corollary, the oneness of man under God. I see it time and time again in our Muslim community, and I've even seen it with myself on many occasions. Here's my own personal example. How easy it is, sometimes in our zeal to hold on to one, to contaminate the other. I was on a pilgrimage a few years ago, and I went to Saudi Arabia, worked in a university there for a year. I don't like to travel. I don't like desert heat. I'm the type of person who likes to stay home. But I went there because I thought, at the very least, I'll get to go to the pilgrimage. It was a miserable year for me. It was just terrible. And after I made the pilgrimage in July, a couple weeks later, I'd be getting on a plane and going back to the United States. But I was so emotionally and psychologically exhausted. You don't know how many battles I fought there in Saudi Arabia when I was there. The people are wonderful people, by the way. But, cultural differences and things like that. But in any case, I got to that pilgrimage. I was weary, exhausted, frustrated, exasperated. But I thought, if anything good is going to come out of this, it's going to be the pilgrimage, and I am going to do it right. And I studied for months before I got there, memorized everything. I knew exactly what to do. I got to that pilgrimage. Well, it started out beautifully. Brothers, even sisters from all over the world, everywhere I went. Are you an American? Yes, I'm an American. Could you tell me how you became a Muslim? I would stand there and start telling people, and there'd be a big crowd around. It made me feel sort of special. I didn't see another guy with blonde hair, blue eyes like me, dramatic looking. The whole time I was there until the very end, I saw one guy. He sort of passed me, looked at me. but in any case, I could see why I felt like a novelty almost, But unfortunately, I got the famous pilgrimage flu about 12 hours into the pilgrimage. And by the second day, I had it big time. I had a temperature of 105. The heat was getting up to 120 something. If you're in Mina or Mecca, there's these huge cliffs on the side. And, you're in like this tiny little valley, like a pot almost. And when that heat comes down, it's 125 outside. It's like 150 ground level. All right, maybe I'm exaggerating. But the heat just rises from the ground. And it's tar now. It's tar of the soil. So it just bakes there, and that heat rises up. I had 105 fever. I was getting sicker and sicker. I was tired of explaining to people how I became a Muslim. I didn't want to talk to anybody anymore. I was sort of hiding my face, hoping nobody would see me. The days went by. We got to the fourth day, the fifth day. I just used to hide, try to get out of the heat. The temperature was getting worse. We sat in those refrigerated buses. I felt like I was in a freezer. I felt like I was sitting on ice cubes. I was shivering so much. I would go outside and walk, and I would just be sweating like crazy. I was getting sicker and sicker day by day. Got to through the stones, got all that done, just got it over with, got hit in the head. I was just so beaten up. I'll tell you, I thought the fasting was hard. Praying 5 times a day, I love, but, that's a challenge. But the pilgrimage, I tell you, it may be easier to get there now than it ever was before, but it's harder to perform all the rituals than it ever was before. I got into that masjid after I went back to the mosque that 6th day. And, the last time I'm going to visit the mosque, then I'm going to pack up, leave, and go back to Jeddah, and from there to the United States. I got to that mosque, and it was more crowded than ever. It seemed like all 2.5 million pilgrims were in there. And they said it was the hottest day of the pilgrimage. And I was going around and making the rounds around the Kaaba, and, the crowd was so huge, you don't even bother walking. Just let them just sort of drag you along, It's just, this press of humanity just moves you along, and here I am sick, I could hardly stand there, just being moved back and forth, going around. Same thing when I make the, sa'i between Safa and Marwa 7 times. It took me, I've done it before, just Umrah, and I've done the whole thing in 45 minutes. This day it took me 2.5 hours. I just had to wait for the mass of humanity to get through. Okay, so I finally make it there. I'm dripping. I'm not the type of guy who sweats. I was dripping head to toe. I was just covered in water. Everything. My clothes were all wet. I just got out of there, and I wanted to get a deep breath, cool breath of fresh air. That heat just blasts at you like a huge, gigantic hair blower. It just hits you in the face. I saw an air-conditioned bus come down, from Mina. Got in the bus. I thought that would take me back to where my own bus was. I'd get off and finally leave. Well, I got in a bus, and I didn't want to talk to anybody. I purposely picked a seat in the back of the bus where no one would bug me. I just figured I'll just go back here, I'll close my eyes, I'll pretend I'm sleeping, nobody will bother me, I'll just, get off and get out. Well, sure enough, I get in the bus, I sit down, I lie there, keeping one eye slightly open, seeing if anybody is looking at me. A face turns around from the front of the bus, he's looking back at me. I think, oh no, please don't come this way. I look again, yes, he's walking down the aisle. Please don't sit next to me. Please don't sit next to me. Boom, I feel a body sitting next to me. Maybe he just didn't like the front of the bus. I was hoping, maybe he just won't bug me. Maybe he'll think I'm sleeping. Close both eyes tight. Please, I don't want to hear those words. And then sure enough, are you an American? I'll just pretend I didn't hear him. I'll close my eyes a little tighter. Excuse me, are you an American? I open one eye just slightly. Yes. Yes, I am. Maybe that'll be enough, I'm hoping. He says, would you mind telling me how you became a Muslim? The man's his name was Ahmed. He was from Bangladesh. I thought, okay, I'll tell him. I reduced it down to like a 15-second explanation by now. I used to tell him 5-10 minutes the first day. Now it was a 30-second spot, like a little sound bite. I told him, well, I was an atheist. I had several objections about religion. I read the Quran. I found those objections. I resolved them. I found much more in the Quran. Actually, once those barriers were broken down, I was moved deeply, and I went to the masjid and became a Muslim. I thought, well, maybe that'll kill it. That'll just about do it. I look up at my friend, and I just look through my eyelashes at the guy, and sure enough, tears are flowing down his cheeks. And I looked at him, and I felt so guilty. Because I always hoped that God would give me that spiritual quality, that something that small could move me so deeply as this moved Ahmed. I mean, here I butchered the explanation, reduced it to 20 seconds, said it arrogantly and exasperatedly, and still he was that moved. And then Ahmed looked at me and he said, Prophet Ibrahim was much different than you and I. He had such sincerity, such faithfulness to Allah, that when Allah told him to do something, his personality was so molded by Allah that he would just do it without question, knowing that there was a wisdom and a genius and a knowledge behind it. He said, when Allah told Prophet Ibrahim to go out and make the call for the pilgrimage, there was no one else there. Maybe a few sheep herders, a couple members of his family. And he's told to go out and call for the pilgrimage. If it was you or I, Ahmed said, we'd say, what? There's nobody here. We'd have second thoughts. But Prophet Ibrahim had such sincerity, such trust, that he knew that there was a wisdom behind it. And he just walked out to the center of this hot valley, and he called the adhan, and called for the pilgrimage. And he said, and if only Prophet Ibrahim could see today, people from all over the world, 2.5 million, thronging to this place, responding to that call. He said, and if he could only see 2 brothers, one from the United States of America and the other one from Bangladesh, sitting as brothers on a bus back to Mina. How that would touch his heart. And I looked at Ahmed, and now I was choking back the feelings. Americans don't like to cry, so I was really I was working, trying to just hold it in, not let him show any feelings or not. And I was successful. But I'll tell you the truth that when he said that, I felt like I had to just repeat the entire pilgrimage again. Because, throughout that pilgrimage, I had done every ritual formally right. I had rehearsed them for months. I got myself all worked up about it. I was going to make sure that I was going to worship Allah perfectly that pilgrimage. But by that last day in Mecca, that last day, I had forgotten somehow, through it all, the second most important implication of the worship of one God. That we are all brothers and sisters as Muslims and in humanity under God's authority and under God's love. And it took Ahmed on that last day to remind me of that. And I thank Allah for sending me. I only wish, well, Allah knows best. I guess that's the way He wanted to teach me. But for my own sake, if I would have had it otherwise, maybe I would have had him come earlier and tell me. But maybe that's the time I needed it most. And may the peace and mercy of Allah be upon you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.